The Discovery, the stars stretched endlessly before the research vessel Pathfinder as it drifted through the uncharted regions of the Andromeda sector. Commander Elena Frost stood on the bridge, her green eyes scanning the data streams that flowed across multiple screens. She had spent 15 years exploring the unknown reaches of space. But something about this particular system felt different. The sensors had detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the third planet, patterns that suggested not just life but civilization. Elena's dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her uniform bore the marks of someone who preferred function over ceremony. She had joined the Exploration Corps not for glory, but because she believed humanity had a responsibility to understand the universe around them. Her father had been a diplomat, her mother a scientist, and Elena carried both their legacies in how she approached first contact situations. "Commander, we're picking up electromagnetic emissions consistent with advanced technology," Dr. James Chen announced from his station. The xenobiologist was a thin man in his early 40s, with sharp features and hands that never seemed to stop moving. His enthusiasm for alien life was infectious, and he had been hoping for a discovery like this throughout their entire 3-year mission. Lieutenant Commander Sophia Reyes looked up from the tactical console, her expression cautious. Sophia was shorter than Elena, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who had survived combat situations that would have broken most people. Her family had a long military tradition, but Sophia had always believed that the best battles were the ones you never had to fight. "I'm also detecting weapons fire," Sophia added, her voice tight. "Energy signatures consistent with plasma weapons. Multiple sources. It looks like a conflict is happening down there." Elena felt her stomach tighten. First contact protocols were clear about not interfering in internal conflicts, but she also knew that sometimes protocols had to bend when lives were at stake. "Give me visual if you can." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the planet below. Veritas 7 was beautiful, with turquoise oceans and emerald continents, but as the sensors focused on the largest landmass, the beauty gave way to horror. Cities burned. Structures that looked like they had stood for centuries crumbled under sustained bombardment. And fleeing from the destruction were beings unlike anything humanity had encountered before. The Kintar, as Elena would later learn they were called, were slender and graceful. They stood roughly 6 feet tall, with skin that shimmered in shades of silver and blue. Their faces were almost human-like, but with larger eyes that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom. They moved with an elegance that suggested a species that had evolved in harmony with their world, rather than conquering it. Pursuing them were creatures that could only be described as nightmarish. The Screeth were angular and dark, their bodies covered in what looked like organic armor. They moved in swarms, overwhelming their prey through sheer numbers. Their ships were just as brutal in design, all sharp edges and menacing profiles. "This isn't a civil war," James said quietly, his face pale as he studied the biological data. "The Screeth aren't native to this planet. Based on their physiology, they're parasitic hunters. They find species, harvest them for biological material, and move on. The Kintar are being exterminated." Elena made her decision in that moment, knowing it would likely end her career, but unable to live with herself if she did otherwise. "Sophia, take us into orbit. Combat ready but weapons cold. I want those Screeth to know we're here without giving them an excuse to fire first." "James, prepare a first contact package. We're going to talk to the Kintar, Commander. Earth Council regulations specifically prohibit interference in conflicts between alien species," Sophia reminded her, though her tone suggested she agreed with the decision. "Then they can court-martial me when we get back," Elena replied. "I'm not going to watch genocide happen while we hide behind regulations. Helm, take us in." The Pathfinder descended through the atmosphere, its shields flaring as it entered the combat zone. The Screeth ships immediately detected the human vessel, and several broke off their attack to investigate. Elena watched them approach, her heart pounding but her hand steady on the command console. "Broadcast on all frequencies," she ordered. "This is Commander Elena Frost of the human vessel Pathfinder. We represent the United Earth Coalition. We are here on a mission of peace and scientific exploration. We request immediate cessation of hostile activities to allow for diplomatic communication." The response came not in words but in weapons fire. Plasma bolts lanced toward the Pathfinder, splashing against its shields. The ship rocked but held firm. Human shielding technology had been designed to withstand asteroid impacts and solar radiation. It could handle a few plasma weapons. I guess they're not interested in talking, Sophia said, her fingers already dancing across her console, shields holding at 92%. Should I return fire? Negative, Elena said. Target their weapon systems only. Disable, don't destroy. I want them to know we're serious, but not that we're invaders. The Pathfinder's defensive weapons, designed for clearing debris and deterring pirates, fired with surgical precision. 3 Scraith ships found their weapons arrays suddenly offline. The remaining ships hesitated, clearly unused to prey that fought back effectively. In that moment of hesitation, Elena opened a channel to the surface. Kintar people, we are humans from the planet Earth. We see your situation and wish to help. Can you hear us? Static filled the channel for several long seconds. Then a voice came through, melodic and touched with desperation. We hear you, humans. I am Ambassador Chiron of the Kintar Assembly. We have defended our world for generations, but the Scraith number in the thousands. We are few now and grow fewer with each passing hour. If you can help us, we would be eternally grateful. Stand by, Ambassador, Elena said. She turned to her crew. James, how many Kintar life signs are you reading? The xenobiologist worked his console frantically. Approximately 15,000 concentrated in the capital city. There might be scattered groups elsewhere, but that's the main population center. Commander, based on the data I'm seeing, there used to be millions of them. The weight of those words settled over the bridge like a heavy blanket. An entire civilization reduced to 15,000 souls. Elena thought about Earth, about the 8 billion humans living their lives in relative peace. She thought about what it would mean to see that reduced to a number small enough to fit in a single city. We're going to need help, she said. Sophia, send an urgent message to Earth. Copy to any coalition vessels within range. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate support. James, I want to know everything about both species. Their biology, their technology, their culture. Anything that might help us protect the Kintar. What are you planning, Commander? Sophia asked. Elena looked at the planet below, at the burning cities and the desperate people fighting for their survival. We're going to buy them time. However long it takes for help to arrive. We're going to keep those Scraith away from the Kintar, even if we have to do it with one ship. The next hours were a blur of activity. The Pathfinder positioned itself between the Kintar city and the Scraith forces, using its superior shields to absorb attacks meant for the people below. Sophia coordinated with the Kintar defenders, teaching them human tactics for urban warfare. The Kintar were not warriors by nature. Their civilization had been built on art and philosophy and peaceful coexistence. But they learned quickly when survival was at stake. James established a research link with Kintar scientists, exchanging data at a furious pace. What he learned both amazed and saddened him. The Kintar had achieved a level of cultural sophistication that Earth was still centuries away from reaching. Their cities were designed to enhance the natural beauty of their world. Their art could evoke emotions that humans didn't even have words for. Their science focused on understanding and harmony rather than domination and control. And the Scraith were destroying it all simply because they could. On the surface, Ambassador Chiron worked alongside a young Kintar named Len Asi to coordinate the defense. Len Asi was barely an adult by Kintar standards, but had shown remarkable courage in leading groups of civilians to safety. When the humans offered to evacuate some of the Kintar to the Pathfinder, Len Asi volunteered to be among the first to go, not out of cowardice but to serve as a liaison between species. When Len Asi materialized on the transport pad, Elena was there to greet them personally. The young Kintar's silver-blue skin was streaked with ash, and their large eyes held a mixture of hope and sorrow that broke Elena's heart. Welcome aboard the Pathfinder, Elena said gently. You're safe here, am I? Len Asi asked, their voice soft but carrying an edge of steel. Is anyone truly safe while the Scraith exist? They have hunted my people across 3 worlds. Each time we flee, they find us. Each time we hide, they dig us out. You humans, you fight them now, but will you fight them tomorrow? Next year? Or will you decide that we are not worth the cost? Elena knelt down to be at eye level with Len Asi. I can't speak for all of humanity. I can't promise that Earth Council will approve of what we're doing here. But I can promise you this. As long as I draw breath, I will fight for your people's right to exist. That's not politics or strategy. That's just being human. Len Asi studied her for a long moment, then their skin shifted to a warmer shade of blue. James had briefed Elena that this was a Kintar expression of trust. Then perhaps there is hope after all. Let me tell you about my people, Commander Frost, so you understand what you are fighting to preserve. Over the next day, as the Pathfinder continued its desperate defense, Lenasi taught Elena about Kintar culture. They showed her holographic recordings of their cities before the Scraith came, places of breathtaking beauty where buildings grew from living crystal and gardens floated on platforms of controlled gravity. They played music that made Elena weep without understanding why. They shared poetry that spoke of finding meaning in the smallest moments of existence, and Elena understood that this wasn't just about saving a species. It was about protecting something precious and irreplaceable. The Kintar had spent millennia perfecting the art of living peacefully. They had created a civilization that valued every individual life, that celebrated beauty and wisdom and compassion. They represented what humanity might become in 1,000 years if they made all the right choices. On the second day, Sophia detected a massive energy spike approaching from deep space. "Commander, we have a problem. A big one. I'm reading over 200 Scraith vessels coming out of faster-than-light travel. They'll be here in less than 6 hours." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. 200 ships. The Pathfinder could handle a dozen, maybe 24 if they were lucky. But 200 was impossible. Even with the 3 support vessels that had responded to their distress call and were racing toward Veritas 7, they were hopelessly outnumbered. "How many Kintar have we evacuated?" she asked. "About 3,000, James reported. "We can fit maybe another 1,000 in the cargo bays if we pack them in, but that's it." "Commander, we can't save them all." Elena looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw determination there and fear, and the same question everyone was thinking but no one wanted to ask. When do we cut our losses and run? But Elena also saw something else. She saw Sophia already working on tactical solutions, trying to figure out how 4 human ships could possibly stand against 200 Scraith vessels. She saw James frantically analyzing Scraith biology, looking for a weakness they could exploit. She saw engineer Yara Okonkwo pulling up schematics of every weapon system they had, trying to find ways to increase their effectiveness. She saw humans doing what humans did best, refusing to accept the impossible. "We're not leaving," Elena said quietly. "We're going to stand and fight. We're going to protect those people down there for as long as we possibly can, and maybe, just maybe, we'll figure out how to win." "With respect, Commander," Sophia said, "the math doesn't work." "We can't win this fight," Elena smiled grimly. "Then we'll change the math. Get me Ambassador Chiron on the line, and someone get Captain Marcus Webb from the support vessels. If we're going to do the impossible, we're going to need everyone working together." As the massive Scraith fleet drew closer, the Pathfinder and its small flotilla of support vessels positioned themselves in a defensive formation above the Kintar city. Below them, 15,000 Kintar looked to the sky with hope and fear. Above them, 200 Scraith warships prepared to deliver extinction. And between them stood a handful of humans who had decided that some things were worth fighting for. No matter the odds, the battle for Veritas 7 was about to begin. The Scraith fleet emerged from the darkness of space like a swarm of locusts, their ships blotting out the stars. Commander Elena Frost stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, watching the tactical display as 200 enemy vessels arranged themselves in attack formations. The odds were impossible, the situation hopeless, and yet every member of her crew remained at their stations with expressions of grim determination. "All vessels report ready." "Commander," Sophia reported from Tactical. Captain Marcus Webb's 3 support ships, the Horizon's Edge, the Resilience, and the Pioneer's Dream, had taken up positions flanking the Pathfinder. They were science and cargo vessels, not warships, but their crews had volunteered to stand and fight without a moment's hesitation. Elena opened a channel to all 4 human ships. "This is Commander Frost. I want everyone to understand what we're facing here. The Scraith outnumber us 50-1. Our shields will fail. Our weapons will run dry. By every logical calculation, we cannot win this battle." She paused, letting that sink in. But logic has never been humanity's strong suit. We're the species that looked at the stars and decided to reach them. We're the people who faced extinction a dozen times in our own history and chose to survive. Today we're going to show the galaxy what humans are made of. Captain Webb's gruff voice came through the channel. "My crew and I didn't come all this way to watch good people die, Commander. The Resilience stands with you. The horizon's edge is ready, Captain Amira Hassan added, her voice steady despite the fear Elena knew she must be feeling. Pioneer's Dream reporting all systems green, Captain Liu Chen confirmed. Let's show these parasites that humans don't abandon the defenseless. On the surface, Ambassador Chiron addressed the remaining Kintar gathered in the city's central plaza. The elderly ambassador's silver skin had dulled with exhaustion, but their voice remained strong. My people, the humans, have chosen to stand with us. They owe us nothing. They gain nothing from this fight except the knowledge that they did what was right. Let their courage inspire us. If we are to face our end, we face it with dignity and with allies who proved that kindness still exists in this vast universe. Beside Chiron, young Lenasi looked up at the sky where the human ships hung like small stars against the darkness. The young Kintar had spent the past day learning about humanity, about their wars and their peace, their cruelty and their compassion. Lenasi had come to understand that humans were a species of contradictions, capable of both terrible destruction and breathtaking heroism. Today the Kintar were betting their survival on which side of that contradiction would prevail. Back on the Pathfinder, Dr. James Chen burst onto the bridge, his tablet clutched in trembling hands. Commander, I think I found something. The Scraith biology. I've been analyzing the data from the ships we disabled, and there's a pattern. They're not just parasitic. They're symbiotic with their technology. Their ships are partially organic, grown rather than built. How does that help us? Sophia asked, her fingers never stopping their work on the tactical console. Because organic systems have weaknesses that purely mechanical ones don't, James explained rapidly. They're susceptible to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. If we can generate a pulse at the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their neural connection to their ships. It won't destroy them, but it could disable them temporarily. Elena felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. How long would we need to generate this pulse? At least 30 seconds of sustained emission, James said. And we'd need to be close, within a few thousand kilometers. The Pathfinder's sensors aren't designed for this kind of weaponization, but Engineer Okonkwo thinks she can modify them. Yara Okonkwo appeared on a secondary screen, her face smudged with grease from working in the engineering sections. I can do it, Commander, but it'll drain our shields completely. We'll be defenseless for at least 2 minutes while the systems reboot. Sophia looked up sharply. 2 minutes in the middle of a battle with 200 enemy ships? Commander, that's suicide. Not if we do it right, Elena said, her mind racing through tactical scenarios. We need a distraction. Something big enough to make the Scraith focus on it instead of us. She turned to the communications console. Get me Ambassador Chiron. I need to know if the Kintar have any defensive technology left. Anything that could draw enemy fire. The ambassador's face appeared on screen, aged and weary but still sharp with intelligence. We have our planetary defense grid. It was disabled in the initial attacks, but the infrastructure still exists. If your engineer could help us bring it back online even partially, it might serve your purpose. Yara, can you do it remotely? Elena asked. The engineer studied her readouts for a moment. Their technology is surprisingly compatible with ours, actually. Beautiful design, really elegant. I can walk their technicians through the reactivation process, but it'll take time, at least an hour. Then we buy an hour, Elena said. She opened the fleet-wide channel again. All ships listen carefully. We're going to play a very dangerous game. The Scraith think we're desperate and outmatched. They're right, but we're going to use that. We're going to hit them with everything we have. Make them think we're making a suicidal charge. Webb, Hassan, Chen, I need your ships to commit completely. Make it look good. And while we're doing that, Captain Webb asked, the Pathfinder is going to disappear, Elena said. We're going to use the planet's magnetic field to hide our sensor signature. Once we're hidden, Yara will help the Kintar reactivate their defense grid. When it comes online, every Scraith ship will focus on it. That's when we strike with our electromagnetic pulse and disable as many of them as we can. It's insane, Sophia said, but she was smiling. It might actually work. The Scraith fleet began its attack run, waves of ships diving toward the planet's surface. The 3 human support vessels moved to intercept, their weapons blazing. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they fought with a ferocity that gave the Scraith pause. Captain Webb's resilience carved through a formation of enemy fighters, its mining lasers repurposed into crude but effective weapons. Captain Hassan's Horizon's Edge used its cargo manipulator arms to literally grab enemy ships and hurl them into each other. Captain Chen's Pioneer's Dream deployed mining charges that detonated like naval mines, creating a deadly obstacle course in space. The Scraith responded with overwhelming force, but their attention was focused entirely on the 3 visible human ships. They didn't notice the Pathfinder slipping away, diving into the planet's upper atmosphere where the magnetic interference would mask its presence. On the surface, Yara worked with Kintar engineers to bring the defense grid back online. The Kintar technology was elegant in its simplicity, using quantum entanglement to coordinate defensive satellites that ringed the planet. The system had been designed to deflect asteroids and natural debris, not to fight wars, but the Kintar had adapted it as best they could when the Scraith first arrived. "Impressive work," Yara muttered as she studied the schematics. "Your people built this to protect, not to harm." "That's beautiful. Okay, I'm rerouting power to the primary nodes. You should see systems coming online in sectors 3, 7, and 12. A Kintar technician, their skin flickering with concentration, worked alongside her. "The humans, why do you risk so much for strangers?" "Your Commander Frost. She must know this will likely end in death for all of you." Yara paused in her work, thinking about the question. "Because that's what humans do. We're not perfect, not by a long shot. We've done terrible things to each other throughout our history, but we've also learned that the only way to be better is to act better, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Commander Frost knows that some things matter more than survival. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right even if it costs you everything." In space, the 3 support vessels were taking a beating. The Resilience had lost half its shields. The Horizon's Edge was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. The Pioneer's Dream's engines were operating at 60% capacity, but they held their ground, buying precious time with their blood and courage. Captain Webb opened a private channel to Elena. "Commander, we can't hold much longer. Whatever you're planning, now would be a good time." 30 more seconds, Elena replied, watching as the defense grid's power levels climbed toward operational status. "Just 30 more seconds, Marcus." But the Scraith were not mindless beasts. Their commander, a creature of cold intelligence, recognized the human tactics for what they were, a delaying action. The question was, what were they delaying for? Scanners swept the planet's surface and surrounding space, searching for the missing human ship. On the Pathfinder, alarms began blaring as Scraith sensors started penetrating their hiding spot. "They're looking for us," Sophia reported. "We've been made. They're redirecting forces to our position." "Defense grid status?" Elena demanded. 90%, Yara reported. "Just a few more seconds." "We don't have seconds," Sophia said as a squadron of Scraith fighters altered course toward their position. "They're coming right at us." Elena made a split-second decision. "Bring us up now. Full power to shields. Yara, activate that pulse the moment we clear the atmosphere, whether the defense grid is ready or not." The Pathfinder shot out of the planet's atmosphere like a missile, its shields flaring as Scraith weapons fire found their mark. The ship rocked violently but held together through the sheer determination of its crew. "Pulse activating," Yara announced. 30 seconds. The Pathfinder began broadcasting the electromagnetic pulse, the modified sensor array pumping out energy at precisely the frequency James had calculated. For 10 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, like puppets with cut strings, Scraith ships began dropping out of formation. Their organic neural interfaces couldn't handle the specific frequency, causing momentary disconnection between pilot and vessel. 20 ships went dark. Then 50, then 100. The Scraith fleet fell into chaos as more than half their forces tumbled helplessly through space. "It's working," James shouted triumphantly, but Elena watched the shield indicators dropping rapidly. 15 seconds left on the pulse. Shield strength at 30%. The remaining Scraith ships, those that had been far enough away to avoid the pulse's effect, converged on the Pathfinder with murderous intent. They recognized the human ship as the true threat now, and they were determined to destroy it. Shield strength dropped to 20%, then 10. A plasma bolt punched through the weakened shields and struck the hull, tearing a gash in the port side. Atmosphere began venting into space. "Seal that section," Elena ordered. "Keep the pulse going." On the surface, the Kintar defense grid finally achieved full power. Thousands of satellites dormant for so long blazed to life. They weren't weapons of war, but they didn't need to be. Their purpose was to protect. and they fulfilled that purpose by creating an impenetrable barrier of energy between the Scraith and the planet's surface. The Scraith commander realized the trap too late. His forces were caught between the planetary shield below and the disabled ships that blocked their escape routes above. And still the Pathfinder's pulse continued, disabling more ships with each passing second. "Time," Yara called out. "Pulse complete." Rebooting systems. The Pathfinder went dark, all power diverted to restarting its critical systems. For 2 minutes that felt like hours, the ship drifted helplessly while Scraith vessels closed in for the kill. Then something remarkable happened. From across the sector, ships began appearing. Not human ships, but vessels from a dozen different species. They had been monitoring the battle, watching as 4 human ships stood against impossible odds to protect a species they had just met. They had seen courage and selflessness and a refusal to abandon the innocent. And they had decided that such qualities deserved support. A massive vessel, belonging to a species called the Zorvath, positioned itself between the Pathfinder and the attacking Scraith. "Human vessel, this is War Master Kroll of the Zorvath Confederation. We have witnessed your stand. We will stand with you." More ships joined the formation. The aquatic Marathi sent their bioorganic vessels. The crystalline Lithari contributed their energy-based cruisers. The feline Koresh deployed their swift strike craft. Species that had hidden in fear for years, that had watched countless civilizations fall to the Scraith, finally found the courage to fight because humans had shown them that the fight was possible. The Scraith found themselves suddenly outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Half their fleet was disabled, and the other half faced a coalition of species working together with tactics they had never encountered. The battle turned from a massacre into a rout. The Scraith commander, recognizing defeat, ordered a retreat. The disabled ships were abandoned, left to drift as the remaining Scraith vessels fled into faster-than-light travel. For the first time in their history of conquest, the Scraith had been beaten. On the Pathfinder, the crew sat in stunned silence as their systems came back online. They had survived. Against all odds, against all logic, they had survived. "Commander," Sophia said quietly, "we're receiving messages from the Coalition fleet. They want to form a formal alliance. They're calling it the Galactic Protection Alliance, and they want humanity to help lead it." Elena looked at the view screen, at the dozens of ships from species they had never met, all united by the simple act of humans refusing to stand aside while innocents died. She thought about what this meant for Earth, for humanity's place in the galaxy, for the future they would build together. "Acknowledge their messages," she said. "Tell them we would be honored." On the planet below, Len Asi stood in the plaza surrounded by the Kintar people. They looked up at the sky where the combined fleet hung like a constellation of hope. Ambassador Chiron placed a gentle hand on the young Kintar's shoulder. "Today we learned something precious," the ambassador said. "We learned that we are not alone, that there are species in this universe who will stand against darkness, not because they must, but because they choose to. The humans have given us more than our lives. They have given us hope." Lenasi's skin shifted through colors of joy and gratitude. They showed us what it means to be guardians. Not conquerors or warriors, but protectors. They fought not to destroy, but to preserve. 3 months later, Elena stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, representing not just humanity, but the principles that had driven her to defend Veritas 7. The council chambers were filled with representatives from 40 different species, all of whom had joined the Protection Alliance. "We gathered today to formalize what we all learned in the Battle of Veritas 7, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "That civilization is worth defending, that innocent lives matter, regardless of what species they belong to, that we are stronger together than we ever could be apart." She paused, looking out at the assembly. "Humanity does not seek to lead this alliance. We seek only to contribute what we can, to learn from you as you learn from us. We are young in the cosmos, still learning from our mistakes, still growing. But we know one thing with certainty. Every species deserves the right to exist, to flourish, to create beauty and meaning in this vast universe. And we will stand with any who share that belief." The council erupted in a gesture that transcended species, a show of unity and support that needed no translation. Back on Earth, the story of the Pathfinder spread like wildfire. Commander Elena Frost became a symbol of humanity's potential, proof that humans could be a force for good in the galaxy. Earth Council, initially furious at her violation of non-interference protocols, found themselves forced to embrace the new reality. Humanity was no longer alone, and their first impression on the galactic stage had been one of courage and compassion. On Veritas 7, the Kintar began rebuilding their civilization with help from the Alliance. Their cities rose again, more beautiful than before, now incorporating elements from the cultures of those who had saved them. In the central plaza where Len Asi had once looked up in fear, a monument was erected. It showed a human figure standing between the Kintar and darkness, arms outstretched in protection. The inscription read simply, "Guardians of a species. Protectors of life. Friends forever." Len Asi, now serving as a liaison between the Kintar and the Alliance, often visited the monument. Young Kintar would ask about the battle, about the humans who had risked everything, and Len Asi would tell them the story, keeping alive the memory of the day when 4 human ships stood against 200, when logic said run but humanity said stand, when the galaxy learned that Earth was home to Guardians. Elena Frost returned to active service, now commanding a joint task force of human and alien vessels dedicated to protecting vulnerable species. The Pathfinder, scarred but proud, served as the flagship. Her crew, tested in the crucible of impossible odds, became trainers for the new generation of Alliance defenders. Dr. James Chen established the Institute for Interspecies Biology, working with scientists from dozens of worlds to better understand the diverse life in the galaxy. His discovery of the Scraith weakness had not just won a battle, it had proven the value of scientific cooperation across species boundaries. Sophia Reyes became an admiral, teaching Alliance military officers the human approach to warfare, creative, adaptable, and always mindful of minimizing civilian casualties. Her classes were always oversubscribed, as species throughout the galaxy sought to understand how humans could be so effective while maintaining ethical standards. And throughout the galaxy, the Scraith learned a painful lesson. The prey they had hunted for so long had found guardians. Species that had once fled now stood and fought. The parasites who had feasted on the weak discovered that the galaxy had grown teeth. Years later, as Elena prepared to retire, she received a message from Len Asi. The young Kintar, now an adult and an ambassador in their own right, wanted to thank her one final time. "You asked me once if I thought we were safe," Len Asi's message said. "I told you that no one was safe while the Scraith existed. I was wrong. We are safe now not because the Scraith are gone, but because we have guardians. We have allies who will stand with us. You gave us more than survival, Commander Frost. You gave us the future." Elena watched the message in her quarters, tears streaming down her face. She thought about that day when she had made the decision to intervene, knowing it could cost her everything. She thought about the impossible odds they had faced, the battles they had fought, the lives they had saved, and she knew with absolute certainty that she would make the same choice again, because that's what humans did. They looked at the impossible and tried anyway. They saw darkness and brought light. They found innocence in danger and became guardians. It was humanity's greatest weakness and their greatest strength, the inability to stand aside when others needed help. Earth had many names in the galactic lexicon now. Some species called them the stubborn ones. Others knew them as the compassionate warriors. But the name that stuck, the one that defined humanity's place in the cosmos, came from the Kintar. They called them the Guardians. And across the galaxy, that name was spoken with respect, with gratitude, and with the hope that wherever darkness threatened, the Guardians would stand against it. The story of Veritas 7 became legend. The tale of how 4 ships held the line, how humans chose principle over survival, how one commander's decision sparked the formation of an alliance that would change the galaxy forever. It was a story that would be told for generations, a reminder that courage and compassion were not weaknesses but the foundation upon which civilizations could stand together. It was a human story, and it was just the beginning.